So here's the video that you guys are essentially forcing me to watch. I'll watch it and we'll see. I'll make my comments on it. Because I think that the only reason I do want to watch this at the moment has more to do with the fact that I am finding myself enjoying the game. Which apparently is a crime. Despite a lot, like PoE 2 is, despite lacking a lot of things, keeping me very entertained, and that's the situation I'm in. And a lot of people are complaining about it and saying that I'm wrong and like I'm a chill and all those things. I'm still having fun, but let's watch it.
Path of Exile 2
let's watch it.
Is bad. I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of believing. I'm tired of coping. I'm a PO1 veteran. I've played on and off for many years, and
This does not translate PoE 1 veteran, by the way. This is you getting just out of the tutorial.
put over 2,400 hours into the game, nearly all of that being hardcore SSF or softcore SSF, which just means I don't trade. I've had a level 96 Berserker who died on hardcore, and I still have a level 90 hardcore champion that survived Ziz's first gauntlet, which is the hardest content PoE can offer. But I'm no pro player.
That's impressive.
I've never even really beaten an endgame boss.
That's actually
I usually
impressive.
get to red map viability on hardcore and then get bored or die. I'm not saying this to flex. The opposite, actually. I'm about as casual as a hardcore player can get, so I feel like I'm the bridge between worlds of hardcore gamers and softcore gamers when it comes to Path of Exile knowledge. So my opinion is pretty decent when it comes to new players to the game for PoE 2 and old school players that have played PoE for a long time.
And also this build completely overwhelms.
Got slow. I abso-freaking-lutely love PoE 1. The endless customizations, the sprawling endgame, the fact that you can spend more time in PoB than PoE. I love learning the game by watching Ziz and learning what not to do by watching Quinn. I love the pointless dramas and the growing community with people like Darth new to the entire scene. In every new season, I can't wait to see the new streamer cosplays for reasons. My point is, I freaking love Path of Exile and everything that comes from Path of Exile. Chris Wilson, the developer for PoE 1, for those who don't know, and it makes me sad that I have to say that, Chris Wilson could pop up on that screen for the next season reveal and tell us that the newest season is literal dog shit. We farm dog shit, we craft dog shit, we sell dog shit. And I'd believe him. I'd go to the Reddit right now and talk about how excited I am for dog shit. I'd spam Discords with dog shit login. Dog shit would be the new meta, and I'd be here for it. So I want you to keep this in mind during this video, that I would sling dog shit for GGG. I would farm.
Calandra. Oh, good lord. Okay.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I need to make this very clear. This is not a fair and balanced take. If you want that, watch the many, many videos talking about PoE 2 and its potential. This video is not an unbiased review. This is a video from a man who just spent the last 100 hours dealing with the slowest attack speed in the game, spiders that slow you more than your already horrific movement speed, and God, why can't I find where this quest goes? I've been through this area so many times, and the spiders slow me, and dear God, why? I just don't... I will try to keep my cool, but as of writing this, I was stuck in Act 2 Cruel trying to finish this quest, but I think it's bugged or something, and I come across this room, this empty goddamn room I have to load in. Are you kidding me, GGG? This is an actual area called the Looted Vault, and it's empty, and... my point is...
The looted vault is empty. Why is that? Why is that a surprise? It's looted already. What I failed to grasp here is how someone who managed to do seemingly pretty damn well in a hardcore environment to PoE 1, including Cicerone's Gauntlet, is struggling with some of the things he's talking about here. That no, it makes no sense to me.
This isn't a fair, balanced take. This is a raw gut reaction to the sequel of one of my favorite games of all time. And before everyone comes at me saying, GGG will fix it, they will patch it, I'm sure they will. But this isn't a review of what PoE 2 will be. It's a critique of what PoE 2 is now. And as of now, PoE 2 is bad. Seriously, why is this room in this game? I'm losing my mind. Why would you even code this? Path of Exile is
He's playing Warrior. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying.
defined as an ARPG, which stands for Action Role-Playing Game. This genre is defined by its top-down isometric view and its focus on two main things: killing enemies and picking up items. Every single game in this genre will have you run around, killing hordes of enemies and picking up loot, and leveling up some sort of skill tree to make yourself stronger so you can kill more hordes, to pick up more loot, to level up more skill trees. It's a game about exponential growth. You start off killing one enemy at a time until eventually you're plowing down rooms of enemies at a time. You can't do any of this without items. Items are where the entire system comes together. And yet, somewhere along the way, GGG got into a boardroom and thought, wouldn't it be fun if we just didn't give players items? Wouldn't that be fun?
Do you guys feel like there's no loot? I feel like they made changes to that quite a lot. I feel like we're dropping a lot of loot. We're at the point where inflation on currency drops is so vast and so incredible without having a sync to it that it's like the opposite at the moment. In the early stage, sure, but this was posted 6 days ago. Like, I don't agree with the loot comment.
First of many,
this stage
many misfires of this game
recorded.
is the lack of drop quantity. In Path of Exile 1, you get so many items. Dear God, you get so many items.
How far has this guy gotten
that
in the
is
game?
Way too many items. And although this is egregiously excessive, there's a purpose for it. There are so many builds and archetypes in PoE 1 that the game has to make sure that something dropping is something you can use. And although there are far less builds in PoE 2, the drop rate is exponentially lower. Here's a picture of me in Act 1 of PoE 1, and here's a picture of literally anywhere in PoE 2 during the campaign. And it seems that GGG were aware of their lack of items in the game because they introduced a solution that no ARPG...
This guy played 100 hours, whatever it was, in PoE 2. Like, how far did he actually get? Because chat's telling me that he's stuck in Act 2 Cruel. There's no way that can't be the case.
Dev in their right mind would think of vendor farming. The amount of people I've talked to and tweets that I've read that tell you to always check vendors because that's where your strongest items comes from is concerning. In a game about killing monsters to get loot, they took out the loot from the monsters and the monsters from the loot. I just go to a vendor now and there's an item waiting for me? Is this fun? Is this gameplay? Actually going to a merchant and buying an item isn't a challenge in a game that brags about being challenging. People say Path of Exile 1 is a hard game. Look at this pinnacle boss content.
One of my finest.
You know what would make vendors actually interesting? Have them be roaming vendors on the map. You find a roaming vendor and you think, great, I finally found a good vendor, time for good upgrades. The crazy part is they have vendors throughout the map in Act 3, and as far as I can tell, they don't offer anything better than the town vendors. But if they made them random spawns, you'd at least feel like you did something to deserve them. Going to the town and hoping for an upgrade for free that you didn't get from monsters or from a drop is the antithesis of ARPGs, and yet here we are. PoE 2's drops were so bad on release that they had to patch drops into the game. They forgot loot needs to be in their game about loot. And yet even now, there's not enough loot. I'm currently level 58 in the game, and I've been using this item that's level 38 since I was basically level 38. So for 20 levels, I haven't gotten a new item upgrade. And this happens for multiple reasons. The first being that nothing fucking drops throughout the game, but the second being socket.
I've used this on 66, I'm 85, and it's going to take me a long time before I find something that's better than this. I mean, it's just, if you find a really good item early on, you'll use it for a while.
See, PoE 1 had this huge problem with their design. Every item had sockets on them, and these sockets over time became more useful than the items themselves, to where people would only pick up items with good sockets rather than good stats. So throughout the campaign, item stats were essentially useless because people only looked at the sockets. So PoE 2 removed the sockets from items and put sockets into their own system, a completely logical and good thing to do. And then, for no reason whatsoever, they re-added sockets to the game. And these sockets introduced the exact same issue that skill sockets did in PoE 1. You get locked into an item now because of the sockets. But now...
Wait, what's that? 12% resistance is locking him into it? Not to mention how easy it is to just scrap bad modified items with sockets to get the orb to make new sockets. Let me show you my gear again. This is in Hardcore Soul Self-Found. I haven't put sockets in this because I'm not sure what I'm going to use it in. I have an empty socket near because I don't need it. Can't put it on that one. I managed to find a Chaos Rest. I put it in a good helmet. Yeah, I don't know about that.
It's just for an item called runes rather than skill gems. And you can't replace the sockets and you can't get your runes back. When they're in there,
Well, you can
they're in there
replace it
forever.
now.
A quick update, just as of writing this, there's been a patch that fixed this. So
Okay.
there's that, I guess. You can now update the runes. I don't know. I haven't played since the patch, but I heard this is fixed. So credit where it's due. Especially throughout the campaign, these runes give you a huge boost in power and sometimes even do more damage than the item itself. For my item here, each rune gives me 20% damage. So my base item is giving me 90% damage, but my runes are giving me 40% damage. So half of my damage is being subsidized by 2 runes. So if I want an upgraded weapon, I now have to find a better weapon that has just as many rune slots, and I have to re-find the runes, but almost every build only uses 1 or maybe 2 types of runes in their weapons. So you're going to continuously run out of runes for that weapon that fit your build. So you keep running into situations where you may have found a better weapon, but because it's not worth sinking more of those valuable runes into your item, you don't.
I mean, he does bring up a fair point for at least attack-based characters when it comes to weapon upgrades. Because, yeah, I mean, runes drops quite frequently. But it definitely is a problem, because if you don't find... Like, if you play the game, you find a good weapon with good mods with runes, you socket those in... The only way you can upgrade that weapon is if you find something that is vastly, drastically better or good enough for you to warrant putting the sockets on it and having new iron runes, which is the ones that he's using, to then make it better than what he's currently wearing. That is definitely an issue, in my opinion, when it comes to the progressional state. But this applies to most things. Like, look at the mini weapon that I'm running on my build right now. I will need to find a +4, preferably with spirit and or other stats, before that weapon becomes replaced that I'm wearing with a new one. It has to be a +4 instead of a +3. It's going to take me a while to find. Like, I'm doing tier 13, 14, 15 maps right now, and I still haven't found an upgrade. And then, like, that's fine. Like, that's just part of the game, right? And some builds have a higher pressure, and certain things like attack-based characters will have a higher pressure of actually good weapons for their damage output. Whereas minions, for example, they want to have plus level of minions across the board, amulet and helmet, as well as your weapon, for example. It's just the current state of the progression of the build. But my understanding, based on what I'm hearing so far, is that he hasn't reached maps, or am I confused? Because it seems like a lot of these complaints is like locked in the progressional part of it, which definitely has some issues. But a lot of this is kind of shadowed when you get to the end game, for sure.
Don't even bother doing the upgrade. In a game that's about finding item upgrades, it's not worth upgrading your item. You're going to see this in a lot of examples, but it's like GGG unlearned the things they learned from PoE 1. It's like Chris had this dirty little secret of how to make his game succeed that he refused to give Johnny, or whatever the fuck the PoE developer's name is. I refuse to refer to you.
There's a difference between criticizing and just straight up being rude and obnoxious. There's like, if someone told me that what I did is bad, I should suck a dick or whatever, I would read the comment, and 5 seconds later I'll forget about it. If someone said, hey Ghazzy, I think this is wrong, or I think you could do this and this, constructive feedback, then I would look at it and I would take it to heart, and I would be, okay, maybe I can do better next time, right? Like, this is just
you on a first name basis. We are not that close. You are no Chris. GGG knew the socket problem, and that's why they removed sockets from items. And then somewhere along the developing process, they thought, hey, let's just reintroduce that problem. Why did we ever get rid of it? And I'm just so confused as to why they make the same mistakes that they've already fixed. But hey, it's not.
They have talked about why they added sockets. It was a counter solution that kept the idea of not reintroducing a bench scrap, which they wanted to stay away from, which I personally disagree with, but that is why.
That bad. At least we finally have in-game loot filters. Oh wait, never mind. That's just no drops in the game. We still don't have an in-game loot filter in the year of our Lord and Savior 2025? How are games like Last Epoch actually showing up PoE 2? It can't be that hard to code in. I just don't understand. Why wouldn't you build in a loot filter from the ground up? I have been saying this for years about PoE 1. I am not just a mindless shill of PoE 1. I will criticize it where it's due. And the fact that you have to go to a third-party website to download a filter to even be able to play the game at a competent level is unforgivable game design. Imagine loading up Stardew Valley and the game is like, hey, first you need to go to bumbleass.cock to download items to see the fruits and vegetables. And you don't even have to imagine it. Think about how many games have failed on Steam because when you launch them, they immediately bring up the Ubisoft launcher and then they get downvote bombed on Steam because people hate that shit. No one wants to deal with a third-party app in your way. And yet GTG thinks it's okay to send us to a third-party website to download a loot filter just so we can play the game? And PoE 2's solution to that wasn't, oh, let's just create the filter in game. It was, let's just give them no drop so they don't need a filter. I feel like I'm going crazy. Whose idea was that? And then when we finally do get items, you have to carry around.
Okay, so looking past the whole rude approach to it, I definitely think that he's on point with the whole forcing us to third parties. Like, no matter if you guys think that he's whining or that he's being obnoxious, whatever, the fact of the matter remains, he's 100% accurate and on point with the loot filters. PoE 2 has made progression compared to P1, where they're removing the necessity of third-party tools a lot, but not enough. We're still forced out of it. For example, things like loot filter. And yes, I actually expected PoE to be in a position when it comes to PoE 2 that would also be one of those things they would not ship people off to a third-party site to fix. So I definitely agree with it. That's a fair take. I mean, if you want me, you guys wanted me to react to this, so I'm going to. And I can't just sit there and just trash talk everything he's doing because this is on point. I have no complaints about this topic he's covering because I agree with it.
Identifying scrolls to be able to see what it is, or worse, a hooded man in town who identifies them? Are you actually serious right now? GGG, my brother in Christ, you are better than Blizzard. Stop copying their homework from 1999. The reason you can filter out stats from items in Last Epoch is because items drop identified, so you can sort for affixes you want in your loot filter, making looting easier and more rewarding. You can make sure that you're picking up things for your class or things that you want to disenchant for crafting because you're positive that you're not missing any items because items drop identified. And yet for some stupid reason, GGG is obsessed with this dumb process of clicking a scroll onto a piece of equipment to see what it does. I already looted the item. I don't understand. Why are we doing this thing from the 90s that was invented? It doesn't give me the feel of a game that's improving. Rather, a game that's gotten comfortable with their system that worked a decade ago. So they keep it without asking why it's stupid. But let's say finally
Am I the only one who feels like I don't mind the process of identifying items? Like, I don't mind it. Sure, it's some extra clicks, but I don't mind it. I don't see it being a negative thing. Would I prefer to see the items dropped identified? Maybe. Last Epoch has a really good system for it, but it's like, I don't know. I don't care enough about this specific topic to complain about it to the point where he's at.
Piece of armor does drop that happens to be rare, you've identified it, and it's good. Now there's a whole nother issue, because one of the only things that matters on your armor pieces is resistances. See, Path of Exile is built around having to have 75% all resistances. This is not optional. 75 is the base amount of resistance that you need to have in order to survive, and then anything above it is good. But in PoE 1, there are ways to cheat resistances, especially while leveling. On the passive tree, through auras, or even through flasks if you're on softcore. But PoE 2 has no way to get resistances outside of just your armor. Making so many stats on your items useless because you're so hard pressed for resistances on armor. But you know what does give you resistances? Runes. The socket problems continues in armors again, not just weapons. I'm using level 19 boots on my level 58 character strictly because...
Okay, so another thing to point out is that PoE 1 demands capped resistances, at least on fire and coal when you get to Act 6. And anything beyond that is now putting you in a position where you kind of want to have your resistances capped or close to. PoE 2... Mind you, I play Hardcore Soul Self-Found. I did not cap my resistances until I was in the end of yellow tier maps. When I started red tier maps, that's tier 10, I think, tier 11. And that's the first time I had my resistances capped. In PoE 1, that is a no fucking go. In PoE 2, in softcore, I started mapping with negative resistances. It's not as hard pressed as it is in PoE 1. So I don't mind it. Like, you don't have to cap your res in a hardcore environment until after maps. And based on what we're hearing, it sounds like this guy hasn't even gotten to maps in PoE 2 and is complaining about resistance caps. But you are not expected to cap your resistances during the campaign, nor are you expected to do so in the early stage of the mapping. So I don't see the problem.
Because it has life and 2 resistances. Because those are the only things that matter when you pick up an item. It doesn't matter if your base item is good, because the armor stat is literally useless. I'm not going to talk about that in detail because people have done many videos talking about armor in this game and why the armor stat is literally useless. There are so few actual useful stats that you need from armor in a game about making choices and where loot needs to be interesting. I mean, how do we still have thorns and light radius and stun threshold? There are just so many.
They have explained this, and that is so that they can separate the scenarios where people who have a good item needs to be separated from a bad item, and the best way to achieve a situation, according to them at least, a situation where you get a list of modifiers in your item that are all good. For that to be the case, there need to be busted mods such as Thorn, Stun Threshold, Light Radius, and Light Region. Now, I think a lot of us have made the argument that it would be better if they didn't exist, and a bad item would be an item that has the correct modifiers, but they're lower tier, right? So there are 2 different ways of doing it, and I don't mind this at all.
Useless stats on armor in a game that's not dropping you much armor. But let's move on. At least we can hold out for uniques. One of the cornerstones of ARPGs are unique items. These are items that completely alter your build and allow you to completely
They have said
build your
that the
character around them.
uniques
And
needs to be more and better, which they're working on.
oh God. Oh, why is this so bad? Who could ever use this?
Fun fact, in one of the playtests in LA, I dropped a cold damage dagger for level 7. And I went up to Jonathan and I said, yeah, I got some feedback. And I showed him the item I was talking about. And I said, the problem I have with this item is that it has no usage whatsoever in the game. It makes no sense why it exists in the current state it is, and no one would ever use it, especially if they dropped it, even if they dropped it at the level where it's equipable. And Jonathan looked at me and said, that's fair. Let me send a message to the guy who made the unique. And I'm like, okay, that's good. He pulls up his phone. He reads out loud what he's saying. Ghazzy says the unique item is shit. I'm just standing there being like, yeah, you could have sugar-coated it, bro. Come on, don't throw me under the bus like this. But the thing is, it was all good spirit, good vibes. I love the guys. So it's like they've already made statements that they are in a process where they are reworking uniques and adding more uniques because they do need some more attention to make them more attractive to be used. And that was just one of those examples. And that was during the playtest. Obviously, this is still the fact, or still the situation when it comes to games and the uniques that are dropping in the current launched early access state of the game, right?
This. Why do they keep using the word reduced? What'd they do to my boy? This was this helm in PoE 1, an actual viable mid to late game item. And this is what we have now? But hey, it's okay. There's a patch that will fix these uniques, and I'm tired. Back in 2023, a small indie company made an ARPG by the name of Diablo 4. And for some reason, they decided, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we made every level backtrack? Gamers love that design. And to no one's surprise but the developers, everyone hated it. It was unanimously the biggest complaint people had with Diablo's 4 entire gameplay loop. Backtracking and walking everywhere. GGG saw that and thought, yes, finally someone gets it. And they took it to the extreme. Every level we backtrack on now. Every area we backtrack on. Hey, let's make the map mechanic rely on you having the clear rares, forcing you to backtrack everything.
Okay, I've made statements about this earlier today with a recent patch that we saw come in this morning. And it is, they have such massive areas. And when the solution to that problem of a massive zone is to add more checkpoints, the problem isn't the amount of checkpoints. The problem is that the zones are too fucking big. That's my argument. And I agree with him on this.
Level. Wouldn't that be fun? Everything we get to backtrack on. There is so much goddamn walking in this game. You spend so
And
much
we're
time
slow compared
not
to
fighting
P1.
and not looting in a game that's about fighting and looting. Let's be honest with ourselves for a minute. Let's be really honest. If any other game did this, Diablo 4, hello, we'd make a video criticizing it and saying PoE bad, but because we like GGG, we give them a pass. That somehow, in a game designed about killing and fighting, we spent 30% of it backtracking. And don't get me started on Act 2. The moving cart thing is really freaking cool, but dear God, this level is a mess. You have to move the cart to go to certain places, and certain areas bring up the sub-map within the map, and you have to figure out what connects and what doesn't. It's a freaking mess, man. Act 3 has...
I like Act 2. It's a small added layer of, you know, black and white. It's a nuisance. But they made it in a way that it actually feels pretty cool. I like that layer of it, so it's not the same old, same old. Every time I get to Act 2, I'm like, okay, now I gotta move the cart to get to these places. It feels immersive. Maybe I'm one of the few people that actually like it, but I actually enjoy that. Yeah, it adds variety. It is an added frustration or nuisance for a lot of people. I can see that. But it's added in such a way that it does give me not just the immersion, but most important factor of it is the variety that it brings. And I like that. I like that system. Because it separates the other acts. It's like, okay, Act 1 is the generic stuff. Act 2, oh, I got to move the card. I'm moving to these areas. I like the added effect of that. And then Act 3, I'm back to doing the regular things, going through portals. You actually go through time travel there at one point, right? I like that.
Some of the longest levels in game design ever, just ever. It's just the same shit area over and over and over and over. The level design is cool, but it feels like it's just padded out to be as long as possible to pad out game time, if I'm being honest. Every level wears out its welcome in terms of length, and I'm actually dreading seeing Acts 4 through 6 if this is their level design philosophy, to make every act longer and more convoluted. So far, we have the unsurprising level design of Act 1 Forest Town, Act 2 Desert, Act 3 Temples. So if Act 4 is some sort of hellscape, I'm actually going to lose my shit. And Act 5 will be snow.
Okay, I will say this. I actually really like the small indicators of paying homage to basically the forefather, the crown jewel of the genre. You guys see this in Last Epoch as well. You know the blinking bears? The one that has like a flicker strike? The name of those bears is Ya'ith Bear. So for those of you who don't know, those are the rune words required to make the body armor Enigma, I believe it is, that gives you the teleport ability. So it's like these small hints to pay homage to this fantastic game that basically is, you know, elevated the entire genre. I don't mind that at all. I like that the acts thematically fit the similar feel that we had back in Diablo 2. I think that's a cool thing. It's not just a small irrelevant thing, but I like that they're doing it with the visuals that way personally. I would love to see them do what he's saying that he doesn't want them to do.
Imagine how original that would be. Remember when I said that the defining features of this type of game are killing and looting? Well, the reason that these two repetitive things aren't repetitive is because of choices. As players, we choose how we want to kill enemies, we choose what items we want to equip, and we choose how to progress our game and what content to do. Well, once again, GGG went into the kitchen to cook an abomination of an idea and said, what if all the choices were bad? The passive tree is neutered. Half the shit on it is so laughably bad that the only thing that matters are damage and movement speed. And once again, Path of Exile 1 already solved this problem. Not only do they have a really cool choice system where when you get the last point of a node, you can get a specialization, but you can only choose one of like 5 specializations for each cluster. So you naturally have to choose not just the tree, but a specialization on the tree. But that's just a small thing that they could add in the future. But PoE 1 learned that the best way to make players choose between two things isn't to make one thing worse than the other, or to give it downsides. It's to make both things really good. Path of Exile 1 makes you make choices by making everything good. There's no way to get everything on a character. Charges, Onslaught, Fortify, All Res, Movement Speed, Rage. When making a character, there are so many things that you are trying to force into a character at once, and the choices weigh themselves out naturally because every choice is good. In PoE 2, they just said, fuck you, with every choice. Rage is impossibly difficult to get because monster density is non-existent, Onslaught is non-existent, is Onslaught even in the game? I'm not sure. Fortify doesn't exist, all res increases don't exist. The only thing that matters when making a build is damage, and there's just no other option for any.
Did you say all resist increase doesn't exist? Is I have a sacrificial mantle in trade that does that exact thing. That's a rare item. Plus to max res? Yes, that's what it does. It gives plus to max res, all elemental res. So no, that's just incorrect. I think that the biggest gripe I have with the skill tree is not at all what he's saying, because I think that what he's saying is incorrect. I think the biggest issue I have with the skill tree is that unlike PoE 1, we are pigeonholed in the different directions, so the slices of the cake, if you will. Whereas in PoE 1, you could start on one side and travel to the other side without that being, the investment of a lifetime to get there, rendering the build really bad for doing such a travel. But in PoE 2, to be able to pull something like that off, you're basically taking your backpack, you're taking your uncle's fucking ring in an envelope, you're saying, you know what, I'm going on an adventure. And then you take a little hike over to Rivendell to be told that you gotta climb the fucking stairs, up, and up the stairs we go, to go down the stairs on the other side of the tree, to get to the fucking Mount Doom in Mordor to toss the ring in. That's a lot of traveling, trust me. They made 3 movies out of it. Watch the extended version and you'll fall asleep watching Frodo run, or just walk this entire distance. It's crazy. And he gets so tired at the end that fucking Sam has to pick him up and carry him the last fucking couple of 100 meters. So like the problem is that there's a lot of traveling going on, and that just makes you feel really bad. Whereas in PoE 1, you have more option in terms of variety to get to the other side of the tree, allowing you to have more build variety. And the worst part about this is that GGG did say that they didn't want the ascendancy classes to pigeonhole people into playing specific classes. That's why we don't have a necromancer class. We have an infernalist, but all the minion nodes are located, well, the top minion nodes are located in such a way that if you want to play minions, you're going to want to be on that side of the tree. So the Gemlin, for example, needs to do a long walk, whereas the Titan needs to do a long walk. Whereas the Infernalists don't need to do that walk, and then you want to be in that area, which kind of pigeonholes you no matter what. Even if the Ascendancy class doesn't do that, the skill tree does that for us. And that is a problem, in my opinion. Less so what he's talking about, though.
Anything else than damage. Even on skill gems, they do this. I'm playing Earthshatter, which launches up these little spires that explode when I Warcry, and it would be really cool to launch up more spires. But if I put this skill gem in it that gives me more spires, I get reduced attack speed and reduced damage, so much to the point that there's no point in using this skill gem, because GGG is obsessed with making the negatives built into the game. They want to punish you for every choice you make. And that's one of the most offensive things to a veteran PoE player, is their insulting lack of decision-making when it comes to builds. PoE 2 tried to get really spicy in the kitchen when they were cooking up build designs, that they forgot that players are the ones who want to cook. All builds have this sort of pre-built plan build that works. For melee, there's a rolling slam that builds up a lot of stun, and there's Bone Shatter that consumes that stun to do a lot of damage. I naturally went this early because it just makes sense, but that's the problem. It made too much sense. Every other warrior during the campaign did this exact thing. Because if something makes too much sense and is too powerful, everyone will use it. And I know people will defend this by saying there's not many skill gems in the game, and this will be fixed with more skill gems, but I want to make this very clear. This isn't a skill gem issue. This is a game design choice. They could have made Bone Shatter a generic strike skill that you could augment through skill gems, but instead they gave Bone Shatter a very specific purpose. And this is one of my main complaints with PoE 2. The developers decide how you are going to use skills, not me. GGG wants to control your builds as much as possible. They want to make sure you're using the correct mix of skills by incentivizing heavily mixing those abilities. It's so obvious, it's frustrating. This is veering dangerously close into Diablo 4 design philosophy, where developers want to control player behavior as much as possible so the developers can make sure you're having fun. This is the antithesis of Path of Exile 1 and my biggest issue as a whole with Path of Exile 2. The devs are trying desperately to control how we play the game. PoE 1 is all about breaking the game. The entire goal of...
Not sure if I agree with it being about breaking the game. It does bring up a fair point, though. I mean, we saw the skill twig and we've seen the skill tree. But though that topic aside, I think it's kind of on point because like GGG wants us to have active, interesting combat gameplay, right? Where you're supposed to do combos. They want the gameplay to be combos. You do this to create heavy stuns. Now he's primed for a heavy stun. Now you use Bone Shatter as an example. Problem is with the current state of the game and the balance, we don't engage with interesting and meaningful combat. We do that in the campaign, but after the campaign, we're back to clicking Spark, or we're back to clicking whatever the shit the Deadeyes are using, or they play the Monk, right? It's back to 1-2 button playstyles. There's no meaningful, interesting combat anymore. It's just one button plays. And I think that the idea of providing tools for different type of combinations is what they're trying to achieve, but they're far from hitting the mark on it. I think that's the situation they're in. Because I remember playing the Warrior when I leveled up the first Titan minion build I did. You play with melee up to Freythorn in Act 1. And that was excruciating. I was default attack swinging till they were primed for a stun. Then I used Bone Shatter. I hope that there are better ways to do that, but that's what I did, and it was terrible. I hated it.
Of a player of PoE 1 is to see what you can get away with and how unethical you can make a build. There's a reason one of the most popular builds in PoE 1 is a build where you literally just walk around and everything dies. But GGG is so obsessed with making sure that you play PoE 2 the way that they want you to play that they dilute down decision making, made levels horrifically long, and pre-built builds to make sure that you play the game rather than break the game. PoE 1 is like a kid at a...
I like the game's decision to guide new players into what to do. It's one of the things that is really, really helpful for the super new players, casual gamers, to have an okay experience with the classes or with the build they're playing. I like that because it helps new players, guides them if they need to. You can deviate from it, but I think it's a good thing. I like that feature, even though I don't use it. I think it's good.
skate park, breaking all the rules and doing what you want in cool ways. PoE 2 feels like a drudge through a museum. Sure, all the fixtures are nice, but I can't do what I want to do. And that's why I play PoE, to do what I want to do. Speaking of not being able to do what you want to do, let's talk about crafting. In Path of Exile 1, if I wanted to take a really good item and craft it into something special, I would start by taking my item, crafting the quality up to 20%, 6-socketing it, and then getting 6 links in it. A very simple, easy process that doesn't take any time at all. And then, I would go to beast crafting.
Before moving on from here, I just want to point out, the vast majority of players wouldn't do this because it would cost more currency than most people would have in the early stage. Maybe they'll do it later. So this is already in a position where a lot of people are not engaging with this because of the cost and time it would take to do this. It is simple. Most crafters do it, but most people don't.
Create a copy
Essence
of it. Take it to the temple and double corrupt it. Go to the harvest bench and re-roll items for a higher outcome to get the affix I want. Go lock prefixes for 4 hours. Beastcraft again because I don't know how crafting works. Predict an outcome. Scour it. We're gonna start over. Create a copy of Beastcraft.
Ghazzy video. I need minions now. I don't even need.
I heard my name.
Predict an outcome. Scour it. We're gonna start over. Create a copy of Beastcraft.
Ghazzy video. I need minions now. I don't
Ghazzy video. I need minions now.
even need
I don't know how craft. Scour it. It's trash. In PoE 2, you start with Exalted Prey. Crafting doesn't actually exist in PoE 2. It's
True.
just picking up a rare off the ground with extra steps. So in PoE 1, GGG removed bench crafting from Ruthless mode, which is basically just what PoE 2 is skinwalking.
I like the conversation I had with Kriparian about this. And he was talking about how PoE 2 is essentially the embodiment of a fine-tuned Ruthless. PoE 2 is Ruthless. I like that take, because it is very, very accurate.
And bench crafting is just a way to get one single deterministic affix onto an item, which means that for some godforsaken reason, GGG believes that any deterministic crafting is bad for their game. And just like, why? Like, why do you hate us? Why do you hate the idea that players want to be able to do stuff with their items and have deterministic outcome? It fills out weaknesses in our build. Remember that issue I was talking about earlier with resistances? This solves it. Bench crafting solves it. And yet they just don't like it. I don't know why. PoE is a game that requires you to have so many different things going for your build. Mana for skills, life to survive, all your resistances, armor, evasion, energy shield, a way to remove bleed, corrupted blood, shock, freeze, curse, additional movement speed, fortified rage, onslaught, and so much more. And GGG is like, yeah, we don't want any of that to be deterministic. It's all just a random crapshoot. You know what? I'm gonna say it. Fuck you, GGG. I get why you didn't want Harvest. I'm not dying on the Harvest crafting hill. But why can't I at least craft one shitty affix onto an item? Why is that a bad thing? One of the main reasons I spent a ton of time in Diablo 4 this season was the tempering, and how it can completely change your build or fill in gaps in armor or resistances. That shit was cool. Yet somehow we live in a world where Diablo 4 has better crafting than Path of Exile? But don't worry, it gets worse.
If you don't include omens, then yeah, I would actually agree that Diablo 4's crafting system is better than PoE 2's at least. I would actually agree with that take. However, the meta craft omens separates it to make PoE 2 better. The problem is they're not set on a bench craft, they're player market controlled. Which means that only the richest of the richest players will ever be able to afford to utilize those methods of crafting. That's why nobody uses them. I play a lot, and I can't afford using them. How the fuck would we expect some casual player to be able to ever use them at that point, right?
For those unaware, there being no loot in the game actually is fixable. You just have to get a bunch of increased rarity of items found on your equipment. In fact, Magic Find is so important that people are foregoing good items so that they can keep Magic Find items equipped, because having worse equipment is worth the trade-off of not having any loot. Ugh. Okay, like mask off just for like 2 seconds. I just need a minute. I'm losing my mind as I'm writing this. Is this good game design? This is bad game design. This is just bad game design. There's no other way around it than a game that requires you to fix their shitty drops with affixes on your items is bad game design. That once again takes away choice. We don't get to choose how we're building our character because the only thing that matters is Magic Find. In fact, GGG knows that this is toxic game design because they removed increased item quantity from PoE 1 because it was toxic, and yet Magic Find is so bad for the game that the entire trade economy, which I don't use SSF by the way, is completely fucked. Like America levels of wealth disparity here.
It's only a level, 62 Saf.
Okay, moving on. Let's just rapid fire off some other remaining bad stuff on my list. You have to go to the well to refill pots. Just why?
Okay.
Why is it returning to town?
Very first playtest in LA, our main gripe that we posted, most of us creators posted, I called the build I was playing in the playtest, I called it the Well Finder. Because I had to consistently go back to town to drink from the well to keep playing fucking build. Now, they fixed most of this by giving charges on kills and whatnot, but the fact that this is still a thing is really fucking annoying.
Good enough for you, GGG? Just another nail in the GGG wants you to play the game their way coffin. Rather than give us the obvious quality of life things like refilling pots automatically, they'd rather us drink from the well because immersion. Charms are the most boring thing ever. I don't know how you took flasks and made it worse, but holy shit, are charms just the most uninspired design I've ever seen. I can't name it.
Okay, so I agree, but I also understand charms. Chat, help me out here. What is the main goal with your flasks in PoE 1? What would you say would summarize the word? Like, well, what would you say is the main goal with the purpose of your flasks? Uptime, power creeping, uptime, remove bleed. Not what they're doing, with the purpose of flasks in general. Automating. Everyone automates them. If you don't have Mage Blood, what do? You run flagellants. You run enchants on them that makes them automatically equip. You don't even want to click them. They become a passive buff. Charms? What is charms? Automated buffs. It's the exact same thing people in PoE 1 strive to get from their flasks. I don't mind them. I'm not a big fan with the current design of them, but they're already giving us from the very start the very same thing we want to make flasks do in PoE 1. I don't see the problem on that department at all.
I'm a single person who actually knows if those things are proccing or not. Base movement speed is reduced for absolutely no reason. Honestly, go load up PoE 1 right now without any boots and see how fast you are. You zoom by default. Bosses' loot disappear if you die when their loot is dropped. I'm all about punishing players for dying. Hardcore SSF, by the way. But this ain't it. This feels like an unintended issue that wasn't playtested. Chests are completely useless in the game. Half the time, a yellow chest drops you nothing, and all the time, a blue chest drops you less than nothing. I don't know why you just wouldn't make it to where a yellow chest drops a guaranteed yellow item and a blue chest drops a guaranteed blue item, but here we are. This quest gives you 2k gold. There's an ascendancy for backpack. There is an ascendancy for backpack. I feel like I'm losing it. Here's the deal, guys. Will PoE 2 be good one day? Most likely. Will it be better than PoE 1? Probably. I know there are people out there saying GGG will fix it, give it time, it's still early access. And yeah, I know that. Hell, even while writing this, GGG has already patched out things that makes my video age a little poorly. And I'm sure in a year, this video will be irrelevant. But you know what my main issue is with PoE 2? It's that everything you like about PoE 2, PoE 1 already did but better. And every pitfall that PoE 1 learned over the years, PoE 2 is remaking those same mistakes. They gutted so many things to make PoE 2 that PoE 2 is just a poor imitation of PoE 1 right now. It's like if my blinker wasn't working on my car and I took it into the shop and they fixed the blinker but removed my chairs. I'm just genuinely baffled by so much game design choice of PoE 2 and how they seem to have not learned anything. And why the PoE 2 devs are scared of the community breaking their game and trivializing content and of power creep. In fact, they're so scared of power creep that they forgot to put in power into their game. PoE 2 devs want to control the narrative of how you play the game. And I get it, that's a developer's job, is to make sure that you're not completely breaking the game. But they went too far. They made levels way too long, they made drops too sparse, they made choices non-existent, and honestly, just PoE 1 did all those things better. I hope this comes across as a passionate rant from an ex-lover, rather than...
I would say it's coming off as a heavy exaggeration with some fair takes and some stuff just being pretty obnoxious / rude. Not necessarily wrong, as a lot of it is opinion-based, but there are better ways to provide constructive criticism or feedback. And I feel like a lot of it just doesn't make sense, but so far, some of the takes are pretty on point.
Than a genuine critique from a game reviewer. I'm just stirring up shit because I want to stir up shit. And hey, I'm not here to yuck people's yum. If you enjoy the game, great. At the end of the day, I'm glad people are supporting GGG and playing a Path of Exile game, because that means my Path of Exile game gets better. Hopefully, if they didn't forget about it. And honestly, when I really zoom in and look at PoE 2, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I was wrong about all this. Maybe, just maybe, I can enjoy PoE 2. Nah, fuck that shit. Play the song.
Is this song after this? No way no. I have playtested it. I have tested it and I don't like it. I don't like it. It's shit. I got me, boys. You got me. I don't like it. It's shit. I mean, I expected to be a lot of shit in the video, but I mean, some of the stuff is pretty on point. Some of it is kind of wild. Some of it kind of rude, but I mean, at least part of the video didn't have any bad takes necessarily. There was some pretty reasonable takes on some issues with the game and whatnot. Do I feel like Path of Exile 2 is bad. I've played the game for 11 years. Path of Exile for 11 years, and I've done a lot. And I'm in a position where I absolutely love PoE 1 for obvious reasons. I've played multiple thousands of hours, like way more than most people in this community. There's not that many people that have played more than me, or for more years than me either, for that matter. And guess what? I'm actually finding myself enjoying PoE 2 very much. And that's kind of crazy to me, because normally I would be bored after 2 months. But here we are. I'm actually still having fun, and I'll keep having fun with it. That's kind of my take on it. Anyways, here's the video we just watched by Renegade Pidge, or Pidgey. Let's try to pronounce that. Sorry if I butchered it. And that's it. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe and keep rocking.